Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to episode 12.
Today's episode is going to be very special, and we're sure that you will love it.
Because we will identify story types. And you love storytelling, of fables, fairy tales, and folk tales. In the meantime, we will review past simple and continuous, and finally review how to tell a story and imagine the end.
We are going first here to start by matching titles to the pictures. So, first title is Hujja or Juha and the Watermelon, Cinderella, the Fox and the Crow. So, it's very easy. The first picture is Cinderella. The second picture is Hujja or Juha and the Watermelon. And the last picture is the Fox and the Crow, a famous fable.
Okay, now let's see if you can put the titles in the correct column in the next activity. So, the Fox and the Crow is what? You think it is a fairy tale or a folk tale? It is a fable, of course. Cinderella is a fairy tale. And finally, Hujja and the Watermelon is a folk tale.
Well, we're going now to read the story together in order to give the infinitive form of the verbs used in it. Follow with me the story. The wind and the sun. The wind and the sun were disputing which was the stronger. Suddenly, they saw a traveler coming down the road, and the sun said, "I see a way to decide our dispute. Whichever of us can cause that traveler to take off his cloak shall be regarded as the stronger. You begin." So the sun retired behind a cloud, and the wind began to blow as hard as it could upon the traveler. But the harder the wind was blowing, the more closely the traveler was wrapping his cloak round him, till at last the wind had to give up in despair. Then the sun came out and shone in all his glory upon the traveler, who soon found it too hot to walk with his cloak on.
And now, here are all the verbs used in the story with their infinitive form. Saw, to see. Said, to say. Retired, to retire. Began, to begin. Had, to have. Came, to come. Shone, to shine. Found, to find. Were disputing, to dispute. Was blowing, to blow. And finally was wrapping, to wrap.
Well, the wind and the sun is a story, and of course it is a fable. But why? Simply because it ends with a moral lesson. In this case, kindness is more effective than severity. So now, what are the features of fables? Let's follow together. A fable is a short tale, often with animals or inanimate objects as characters. It teaches a moral lesson.
Okay, when we tell a story, we generally use the past simple for actions which are sometimes short, and the past continuous tense when the action is progressive. And it is important to know how to use them. When we have two actions in the past, it can be 1. Two simultaneous short actions happening at the same time. We use the past simple tense and the time conjunction when. Example, Cinderella ran away when she heard the midnight bell.
2. Two progressive, long actions happening at the same time. We use the past continuous and the time conjunction while or as. Example, the woman was feeding her child as the snake was creeping into the room, or as the snake was creeping into the room, a woman was feeding her child.
3. A progressive long action interrupted by a sudden short action. The first one is in the past continuous, and the second action is in the past simple. Example, while or as the snake was creeping into the room, the father shot it dead. Or, the snake was creeping into the room when the father shooted dad?
Well, you've noticed that just with if clauses and the time conjunctions or the time clauses we've seen before, that we always need a comma between when the sentence begins with the time conjunction. So, well, this is done. Now let's move to the next part. Here, guys, it is time to practice, okay? So put the verbs in the correct form. 1. It was time in the middle of winter, the wind to blow and the snow to fall outside. So the wind was blowing and the snow was falling. Long actions in the past. 2. A child's queen to sew while to sit at her window. So was sewing and was sitting. 2 also simultaneous actions in the past. 3. She to look at the falling snowflakes when suddenly she to prick her finger and 3 drops of blood to fall upon the snow. First becomes was looking. Prick becomes pricked. To fall was falling. 2 long actions which were interrupted by a short one, brief one. Number 4. As she to watch the drops of blood, she to wish for a baby girl whose skin would be as white as snow, cheeks as rosy as blood, and with hair as black as ebony. Of course, to which becomes was watching, a long action, and to wish becomes wished, which is in the past simple.
Well, the sentences used in the previous activity are taken from a famous fairy tale, Snow White. Now, how can we say if it's a fairy tale? Well, a fairy tale is a story, usually for children, about magical or imaginary creatures, elves, dragons, fairies. The characters are either good or evil.
Well, we saw so far that in stories we use lots of time conjunctions and markers like while, when, and as. Here is now following a funny story that is missing. There are no time conjunctions. So let's put the right time conjunction in the story. So the time conjunctions are while, as, and when. Last week, a woman had lunch in a small restaurant. She finished. She looked for her bag, but it wasn't there. The answer here is when she finished. Now, second, she was looking for it. The waiter arrived. While she was looking for it, the waiter arrived. Next, 2 minutes later, he returned with the lady's bag. I'm sorry, here's your bag. My dog took it into the garden. It often does this, he said. She was leaving the restaurant. She saw the dog taking another customer's wallet. Here the answer is as.
Okay, tell me, boys and girls. Now, you know how to distinguish between a fable and a fairy tale. What about a folk tale? Well, a folk tale is an old story that has been told and retold, have been passed from generation to generation by word of mouth until it was written down.
And of course, here is a folk tale that we're going to read together and try to find out the end. All right? Follow with me. You will have 3 endings. Let's choose the best one. So, one summer day, it was too hot to travel, so Hujja or Juha got off his donkey and lay down under the shade of a nut tree, near where watermelons were growing. He thought for a while and said, "How strange it is that God created watermelons to grow on such tiny stalk, while these little nuts grow on such large tree." Just then, what happened? A. He fell asleep and started dreaming of watermelons growing on the tree. As they grew bigger and the branches started breaking and falling on his head, he woke up screaming. B. He felt hungry and ate an entire watermelon. The owner of the field saw him and threw a nut on Hujja. He tried to run away, but he was too heavy. C. A nut fell from the tree and hit Hujja on the head. He nodded and said, "God knows best. If watermelon grow on trees, my head would have been seriously injured. And of course, the correct answer is the last one. Okay? So now here, it's your turn to write, to choose a story you like, a fable, a fairy tale, or a folk tale, all right, to write. But you need to remember, all right? So those traditional stories, they start either with once upon a time, one day, long time ago. We have always, you need to mention the name of the hero and the villain or the evil character, the bad character, and then use the past simple tense and the past continuous. Use the time markers, while, when, as, before, as soon as, later, then, after, until. And of course, if you choose a fable, make sure to finish it with a proverb or the moral lesson.
Okay, I am sure that you all know the famous fable, The Fox and the Grapes. Now you can write about any other fairy tale or folk tale. But on the whole, it is generally the same, apart from the moral lesson. So let's remember the fable of the fox and the grapes. The Fox and the Grapes. One hot summer's day, a fox was walking through an orchard till he came to a bench of grapes, just ripening on a vine which had been trained over a lofty branch. Just the thing to quench my thirst, thought he. Drawing back a few paces, he took a run and a jump, and just missed the bench. Turning round again with a 1, 2, 3, he jumped up, but with no greater success. Again and again, he tried after the delicious grapes, but at last he had to give it up, and walked away with his nose in the air, saying, "I'm sure they are sour." So the moral lesson here, it is easy to despise what you cannot get.
Well, that's all for today. It's time to say goodbye. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye and see you next time.